Hi, I'm Shahin, and my daughter Madison and I just got back from a missionary trip to the Philippines, and we went with a church down in Reno. I wanted to go. I love doing missionary work in foreign countries because they just don't have a lot of resources that we have. We have churches everywhere, we have water everywhere, people can have transportation. But when you get to some of these other countries, poor takes on a whole new meaning. And I know we do have poor people in America, but I really have a heart for people in other countries just because their resources are so much more limited than what we have in America. So we went on this trip, and what I liked about it is that before we got there, this was all planned out. We had a Filipino team we met with. There was 6 of us on our team from America. And we met with a Filipino team, and they had already met with local pastors in the area of where these pastors wanted to start new churches. And in the Philippines, you can drive about an hour on a dirt road, and it seems like you're going in the middle of nowhere. And then all of a sudden, a village appears, and this village is really, really poor. It's basically bamboo houses and houses that look like they built them themselves. They don't have running water or electricity. A lot of them did have solar panels that they're outdated solar panels that they use to maybe have one light. Their houses are really small, like about the size of one of our bedrooms. And when I first got there, I remember seeing all these dogs, and I was really sad about these dogs because they were so skinny. But after a while, when I started getting to know some of these Filipino people and we started praying for them, I could see that they were just as skinny as their dogs. And the other thing about these people is they don't have transportation, so they walk everywhere they go. And that's why these pastors are trying to plant a church in every little village, because these people don't have the resources to drive an hour to the next town where there is a church, because they don't have transportation. They are walking. And it took us an hour to get there by a vehicle. If they do have transportation, it's one motorcycle that their whole family piles onto. So, so we chose to go to this area because we wanted to make a difference in people's lives that may never have heard God. Being an American and going to a foreign country, they really value opinions of Americans because they see us on TV shows. You know, most people have seen TV or the internet, and they really look up to the people in our country because we have so many resources here and we have so much abundance here. They just really look up to us and they want to hear what we have to say. Even if they're not Christians or they are Christians, they are just interested in what Americans have to say. So that was a big plus going to their country. So these pastors met with this Filipino team, and they identified places where they wanted to plant these churches. And they, so in these small villages, it was places where pastors said, I will be willing to start a small church there. And they start these churches through Bible studies. So we did these crusades, and what we did is we had this Filipino team. They had a band and sound system, lighting, mixer, and it was very professional. We went into these pre-designated small towns that we had to get permits. You wouldn't think you'd have to get a permit in the Philippines in a small town, but you did. We had to get permits, and we did them. Every small village has a basketball court and also a stage. So we set up our band, and we from America were the attraction because we were there from America. Also, these towns don't have anything going on, so the fact that a band was there with sound equipment is also another big attraction. So basically, the whole town would come out to these crusades. And we would do skits, we would do funny skits, we would do Christian skits on like the forces of good and evil that draw you. It's a really popular skit that they do at places. We did funny things. We had a fire dancer, and then we did testimonies. We did greetings from America. We did, our pastor that was with us did a message every crusade. We played music, just fun music, and also Christian music. And then we had a call for salvation if people wanted to accept Jesus into their heart. and 90% of the people would raise their hands to want to accept Jesus into their heart. And at first, I was thinking, why would everybody come forward? I mean, are they just coming forward because we're Americans? And they said, no, there's a revival going on in the Philippines. So that was really exciting to see that so many people wanted to accept Jesus into their lives. And then after we did did like an altar call type thing where they came up, raised their hand to see if anybody wanted to accept Jesus into their lives. After that, we did a call to prayer, and we talked about how Jesus wants to meet them right where they're at, and that Jesus cares about their every need, and he loves them so much that he sent us all the way from America just to tell them about Jesus and the great love he has for them. So we had a call for prayer, and we said, God will meet you where you're at. God cares about your financial needs. God cares about your family needs. God cares about struggles that you have. God cares about infirmities that you have in your body. He cares about healing that you may need. He cares about injuries that you have. And anything that you would like prayer for, our team will pray for you. So we would line up these people in these really long lines, and they would wait in these really long lines, and our whole team and the Filipino team would pray for these people in these really long lines. And then after we prayed for them, there was a person that they would go to after, and they would fill out a card of their information, so then the pastor could follow up with these people. They also got a book of hope, and a book of hope for them, like for us, we get lots of things in the mail, and we throw everything away that we don't want. They don't get any mail, so when they get a printed piece of material, they're like, we each get one. Like, they were so excited to just get a little pamphlet called a Book of Hope. Basically, it contains some scriptures and some things, and if they completed the Book of Hope and answered the questions and brought it back the next day, they would get a free Bible, and that was a really big deal for them to get a free Bible. So some of the most amazing things I saw on this trip was, one, that all the people were just hungry for God. And even though they were so broken and they were so skinny and they were so poor, they really believed in God, and they believed he was a good God, and they came forward, and you could see it on their face that they just wanted to know this God that loves them. And we prayed for a lot of people. We saw God do amazing things. I would pray for people, and then we would say, test it, see how you feel. And they would say, it's gone. Like people with migraines, so many people came with migraines, and I would pray for them, and they said they had migraines all the time, and they didn't have relief, and I'd say, do you have a migraine right now? And they'd say, yes. And I'd pray for them, and then I'd say, how does it feel? And they'd say, it's gone. Or people with stomach issues. A lot of people had a lot of stomach issues that I prayed for. It seemed like 90% of the people would just say, it's gone. And it was just amazing to see God move in miraculous ways, and in ways that we felt like we really touched the heart of these people. And what I really loved is that, like, when we went home, it didn't just end there. Like, it wasn't like, okay, the Americans came and they talked to us about Jesus, now they went home. It was, they have follow-up with these local pastors, and all the local pastors got those cards, and they followed up, and their goal is to start Bible studies in homes and then eventually plant churches. And they've been doing this for 12 years, and they've been statistically following the analytical results of this, and they're finding it to be very effective. So their goal is to try to reach the whole Filipino nation. They had a 10-year goal, but they're already at 12 years because there's 7,000 islands. And a lot of times we did travel by boat to these islands with all this sound equipment, and their boats don't look like our boats. They hand make their boats, and their boats look really rickety and like even unsafe. And we put all the sound equipment and ourselves too squished in with all the sound equipment, and we'd go to small islands where they were isolated, and we would present the gospel. And these people received us with open arms and hungry hearts, and it was really amazing to see. I brought my daughter Madison. She's 14, And I really wanted to bring my daughter because I really think it's important for young people to experience God moving in mighty ways. And when we step out in faith and when we ask God for miracles, we see them, because our God is a God of miracles, and our God is a God that wants to reach people all over the world because He loves them and has a plan for each one of us. And so I really wanted to bring my daughter because I wanted her to experience what it's like to be in a foreign country, to see people that are really poor, they don't even have any resources, no running water, no electricity, they just are very limited. I think they said the average income was about $100 a month there, and I'm sure there's people that don't even make that. So I just wanted her to experience God in a big way. And I just think it's important to bring kids. I've brought all my kids on missions trips because I just think it's a way to really experience God in a real way, because right now it's shown statistically that when kids that have grown up in a Christian home, when they get to be teenagers and when they move out of the house, they no longer follow the God that they were brought up with. And I really want my kids to experience God in such a way that they know He's real, that they know He is a God they can serve and that they can love and they can trust and they can see Him do amazing things. And when they know that that God is real, they are going to want to follow Him. And so I wanted my daughter to go because I wanted her to experience God in these ways. And I really want my kids and all kids to follow God because it's the best thing in my life that I have found true. I have peace in any circumstance. Even when circumstances go bad, I can still have the joy of God because I know Him in such an intimate way that I trust Him in circumstances. And I don't have to worry about things anymore because I really trust in Him. And we all have bad things that happen in life, but when we can trust in God and when we know Him in such a deep way that we know we can trust Him, we can have peace in any circumstance and joy in any circumstance. So I really want my kids to know God in this way. And like I said, all kids and all people to know God in this way. So that's why I believe in doing missions trip, and that's why I wanted my daughter Maddie to go. I learned that God, when we are hungry for God, He meets us right where we're at. When we really seek Him out, we can experience Him in mighty ways. We can see healings on the spot. We can see we can feel His peace and His presence. We can see the hunger in people's eyes, and it just encourages my faith when I see God moving and when I see people hungering after Him and people's lives changed. And even the team, we had this Filipino team, and there was one guy on the team. He grew up an orphan, and it was through Youth with a Mission. Some kids from Youth with a Mission, known as YWAM, they witnessed to him on the streets, and he became a believer on the streets. And he was still an orphan, and he didn't want to belong to the orphanages because the orphanages were so bad, so he'd always run away from them. But when he came to know Jesus in such a way, his life was transformed. And then he went to YWAM himself and really grew in his faith. And now he was on this Filipino team. He was the fire dancer. He learned how to do fire dancing through YWAM. And so he was part of the team. And every time we had these crusades, we would form a big circle with our whole team. And we would pray for the village. We would pray. We had so many things that we prayed for, and we would just all pray, and it was so amazing to see God answer our prayers and move in mighty ways. So God not only transforms the lives of the people we're ministering to, but also in our own lives and in our own people that we encountered on the team, and even in our own lives. He helps us grow when we serve Him, and so that's just amazing.
Hi, my name is Madison. I am 14 years old and in 8th grade. In the beginning of the year, I was really struggling with public school and my friends and teachers and everything. So me and my parents made the decision to take me online school. And I had no idea about the Philippines or about a Mexico trip that I went to or about any opportunity with mission trips. But I felt like God was just calling me to do homeschool for so many different reasons. But later on in the year, the missions trip to the Philippines came up, and I decided that I would go, but I didn't really know anything about it. My mom was just like, "Do you want to go to the Philippines?" I'm like, okay. And then I had a meeting with the pastor, and I got to know exactly what we were doing, and I got so scared. I was like, I'm not doing this anymore, take me out of this. But God was like, nope, you're going. So I just hopped on the plane with 6 other Americans, and we headed to the Philippines. When I first got there, I realized how good my life was and how beautiful, what a beautiful place I live in. But what I noticed about the Philippines is that the barangays, the villages, they were really separated, and they didn't know that there was another village outside of theirs, because they never could leave theirs. They were always just there because they had no transportation or anything. So what was really eye-opening to me was how poor they were living, but still the little kids, especially for me, they still had a time of their lives just playing on the streets and playing with each other, even though they didn't have any toys, or even little kids that I see today are on laptops or something, just playing games on their phones. And I just really loved how no one had a phone, no one had this or that they still were happy living in a poor village, and they thought that their life was good, while we're over here thinking, oh, I don't have the newest iPhone, or I don't have a TV in my room, my life sucks. And I just really realized how thankful I just realized how grateful I am and how much I have. So we went to high schools a few times, and their high schools are 7th grade through 12th, and I really didn't want to speak in front of 1,000 kids, because I just it was weird. I felt like me teaching them about God when I'm younger or the same age as them. So I just got really scared, and I was like, no, I didn't really speak as much as the adults did, because I was just always so nervous. But I finally stepped up and shared my testimony, which was basically about my school and me not really fitting in with my friend group. But I shared it, and I felt like God just really, He basically emptied me with all the regret and doubt that I had on myself, and that He filled me up with, this is who I am, and I need to share my testimony that all these things were happening to me, so I can inspire other kids and teens to just know that there is hope in every situation, that we don't ever have to be in doubt, because if we have God, then we know we're never lonely, or we never know that we can't be loved or anything like that. So, at the Crusades, I did the skits with the Filipinos. So I was the young princessa, and it was me talking. They were just telling me how I was white because I drank too much chicken milk. So it was just a funny skit that they would say. And then there was another one called Everything, Everything, where there was this girl that was just born, and then God just taught her how to do things, and she was really she was never alone, but then she separated herself from him, and then all these bad things. So I was the model, and I was judging how she looked, and I was like, what are you wearing? You need to fix what you you need to fix yourself. You're not okay, you're not worthy or anything like that. But then God it was just a spiritual battle basically. But what I know got to the kids, that we already won the spiritual battle, that there's victory in the kingdom, and that we don't need to worry anymore about the devil taking over our lives, because God already has an amazing plan, and that all this sadness and fear and doubt and regret that we have down here on earth is just here. But when we go up to heaven, all that will just be gone, that there won't be any more sadness, that we can just live in peace, and that's what God wants best for us. One lady I prayed for was one of the first ladies in my line that night, and she came over to me and she's like, please pray for me. She was so desperate. She was such a hard-working lady, and she was, oh my gosh, she was probably like 75, and she was still working, and she told me that she had to climb up this huge hill each day to get to work, so her knees were in so much pain, her hips, her lower back, and so I was so nervous to pray. I was like, I cannot heal people, that's for sure. But then, when she said that, and when she was bawling her eyes out, she was so desperate for God and for the love that He is in the future that she has, that I just, when I reached my hands over to her head and her knees and her back, my hands got really, really warm and they started to tingle. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. It wasn't even me speaking, I don't think. I think it was God speaking for me, because that was probably the best prayer I've ever prayed. And I thought she was crying, even more. She was crying through that whole prayer. But basically, I just prayed for her healing and everything like that. And then she was crying even more, and I was like, oh, it didn't work. She's really disappointed. She was crying because she was so happy and relieved. And the Filipinos are kind of different than us. When we are excited, we show our feelings, but they're more, they just, okay, cool. But then she started crying, and I was like, well, how do you feel? And she started dancing and twisting her back, stretching her, kicking up high, and it was, and laughing, and it was so cute and funny. We all just had a blast, and I could really tell that she was a special woman, that she was so desperate for God that she just needed that one little piece, that God took a big step towards her, and then it was her choice to take a step back into the Lord. So that was just really inspiring, that even how old you are, God is still going to do so many miracles and wonders in your life, that you never have to think, oh, I'm too old or I'm too young to do things. That a 14-year-old went to the Philippines in a really remote country, that we can do anything, and that there was an age group all the way over to 75, that they were still doing things and they were still active in God. So I think that really was cool. I think it's changed my faith is when probably I'm more comfortable praying now for other people, and I know that if anyone can be a healer, it's just your choice to take a step towards Him, because if you just kind of step back and you're like, oh, I can't do things, or just start doubting yourself, that God's just no, you can do it. And basically, I thought I was fine. I didn't need to go on a missions trip. I'm already fine. It's whatever. And so what someone told me in the Philippines was, the thing about faith is that it's like an ocean, that scientists still don't even know what's at the bottom, and that the deeper and deeper we go, the farther and farther that we know with God. So I just thought that was really cool, and that's how my faith has changed.
So one thing I saw when we were praying for these people is that these people are working really physically demanding jobs, and they're working in the fields, they're working just manual labor type work, and it's probably for not that much, because at the most they make $100 a month, and that's for a whole family. They were saying that was the average income, but they were just really skinny, because when I would put my hand on their shoulder, I would say, can I put my hand on your shoulder, your back? I could just feel their bones, and they just felt really, really skinny. But at the same time, even the young people were coming for like backache or stomach ache or chronic headaches, and it just seemed like they didn't have enough food, and they just worked really, really hard, and that's what made them even more desperate for a touch of God, is because of their physical and spiritual condition. And so I saw God meet them in mighty ways, and that was really amazing. So we had a cook, and she's a Filipino cook that knows how to cook for Americans, because we couldn't just eat any food because we would get sick. So she's been, this team, the American team, which consists of different people every year, have been going for 12 years. And the Filipino team has one American girl on it. She married a Filipino guy. She's from the U.S., she's from Michigan. She married a Filipino guy, and they're the ones that run the Filipino team down there. So they know how to cook for Americans, and our cook was so good. She cooked fish. We had a lot of fish. We ate chicken. She cut up fresh vegetables, and they don't have, like when they make a meal, they have to make everything from scratch. It's not, they don't have a frozen section. Like they don't even have a grocery store. They just buy like vegetables on the street, or they kill the chicken themselves. Yeah, you know, and these chickens are free-range chickens. They're not like in a coop and stuff. They're just roaming around everywhere. And so the food was excellent, and she was an excellent cook. And what was really amazing is for 2 weeks, it was about $3,000 each, but our money went to not only pay for our accommodations, but it also went to pay for all the Filipino team accommodations, and there was about 20 of those guys. And it paid for our cook and our transportation, and it paid for the books of hope, and it paid for all the things we needed to make that happen. And without Americans coming to the Philippines with the money, they wouldn't have any money to do all the things they want to do to reach people for God's love and for the kingdom. So the money we bring, the money we pay goes a long ways, especially if you go to a poor country like Africa or the Philippines or any other poor country.
We did 10 crusades in the 2 weeks that we were there for the Philippines, and the end results were the crowd. We had 6,344 people show up. The salvation was 4,752. The Bibles that we passed out, we passed out the Book of Hope, and then if they followed up, then we would pass out Bibles, and that was 315. Bible studies started at people's houses, so they filled out a paper if they were willing to start a Bible study at their house. So that was 79. And Book of Hope that was passed out and given to people was 3,682. And then we planted one church.